fatal heart impacts, past painful scars. In fact, I blast tasteful bars and pass. I back up my actions, fact don't ask, grab reactions, jacked attack with every word, then act with class as they hear me snap. I got nothing to lose, cause I fought and felt the bruise. Now I'm not the one confused, call the shots and they produce. I ain't lost, I'm finally loose, pick a new silver excuse. I need the views to boost me to a new abuse of being used. Everybody wants a piece now, y'all can rest in peace now. You're dead to me, so peace out. Remember, you're discreet out. Get ready for defeat now.
Alrighty. Hello everybody. This is Kirusho here. And now, whenever we last left off with the series, we had Deku Todoroki and his brother, Shoto Todoroki. We have just gone through the quirk apprehension test, and we had the results. Deku and Todoroki, they actually did perform a whole lot better. Todoroki actually bumping up higher in the rankings along with Deku, who instead of being in last place, he was closer to first. Now, Deku and Todoroki, they almost got first in a whole lot of events. And then there was Denki and, well, Momo. Now, Ochako still did get first place in the ball throw. However, these four actually did show off quite a bit of their own power. Now, with that being said, let us cut to the heroes versus villains exam. Now, with that being said, everybody, they do actually come walking out. And we actually do find out their hero costumes. Now, Todoroki, similar to Canon, actually does have the same hero costume he does have, the blue one. However, it also does show certain signs, or at least different components on the outfit. Now, Todoroki's outfit does actually appear to be fire resistant, along with cold resistant. Along with that, he also does actually have something on his back, or, well, somewhat kind of like a vest. It looks like a metal plate strapped to two things that he can put on like a backpack. And this actually does help Todoroki. Basically, it can help him monitor his internal body temperature, in case he does actually get too hot or too cold. Now, he also does actually have them connected to wristbands. If the wristbands suddenly switch temperatures from heating to cooling, that will give Todoroki a very good sign that he needs to either switch off to one ability or go back to his half and half. Now, with that, we also do have Izuku, whose hero costume is actually quite strange. His hero costume looks like a full one-piece suit that he quite simply slipped a few extra things on. Now, he's wearing hockey pads, knee pads, and actually elbow pads. Along with that, he does actually appear to have some form of brown armor on his body, along with actually covering his back. Now, with that being said, everyone does actually see this, and certain people are confused. And then we actually have Denki. Now, as for her hero costume, it's actually kind of a bit more strange or peculiar. She does keep the tracksuit design. However, the material it is made out of is a bit different. Her material, or her suit's material, is made out of regular standardized fibers. And where it does actually go through certain parts of her body, she has them made of rubber. And other pieces of the suit are actually made of metal. Along with that, there is actually that piece of support gear that Momo did actually create for her. The metallic disc that she can run a metal current through. An electrical current through. Now, with that being said, everyone does actually see them all, and finds it to be quite interesting, as All Might does actually look at everyone. not really a whole lot of changes have happened. And you do actually have Shoto and Izuku. Both these two actually talking about each other's outfits. Midoriya kind of making fun of his brothers, as Todoroki's making fun of his. Now, Midoriya actually has to tell his brother that's all cool. However, does he have these? Him reaching into his pocket and pulling out a pair of goggles, before putting them on his face. Now, All Might does actually look at Midoriya for a second, as everyone is staring at him. These strange goggles. They appear to be made of mostly glass, and they don't really seem to get in the way of Midoriya's vision, especially with the way they look. They are quite strange. Now, All Might does actually say that they are going to be doing a heroes versus villains test, and that this will provide exactly how much they would know about the situation. Him going to pair people up. Now, I believe everyone does actually see where this is going. Midoriya and Denki are paired up. Now, along with that, so are Momo and Todoroki. Now, you actually have Bakugou, who does hear about who he is going to be facing. Or not who he's facing, who exactly is on his team. Now, Bakugou and Kirishima are actually paired up. Bakugou actually asking, well, the idiot, or this redhead, if he's ready to fight. Kirishima telling Bakugou that he's actually very pumped up, and that he's ready for anything. Now, Bakugou does actually like to hear that, saying that even if he does have a stupid quirk, the two should be able to beat anyone who comes along their way. Kirishima actually telling Bakugou that his quirk is actually very impressive, going on to state that in fact he can probably keep up with Bakugou and beat him. Bakugou turning to scream at Kirishima. Now, everyone does actually watch that happen, until All Might does actually inform them all to get into their positions. As we do actually have Midoriya and Denki. These two walking into the building and playing the role of the villain. As Midoriya actually does close his eyes as he's walking, with these goggles on his face. They do seem to be a bit more blacked out, so you can't really tell if Midoriya is staring at you, or where he's even looking. Now, Midoriya actually is running his hand along the wall, and is somewhat beginning to wonder if his idea will work. Hopefully. Now, with that being said, Midoriya, him and Denki do get to the top floor, taking the elevator and immediately getting to work. Now, Kirishima and Bakugou quickly begin to make their way into the building, and are ready to face off against the two people with two quirks. They might be outgunned, they think, or outquirked, but they are going to bring some serious firepower. Now, with that, we actually have Midoriya, who is standing there, as he quickly just brings his hands down to the ground. And the building does somewhat begin to shake around a little bit. Denki watching as Midoriya, he actually does turn the ceiling directly above the bomb into sand. And the ground underneath the bomb begins to rise up. Midoriya putting the bomb on the very top of the building. And then him actually creating more sand out of that giant pillar, as it does actually begin to fall. Midoriya walking over and basically sitting down in this pile, asking Denki if she has everything going on right here, or if she's going to face off against Kirishima or Bakugou, asking her which one. Now, the two quickly begin to strategize, and Denki states that she can go after Kirishima. Especially if she does actually mean to try and push herself. She has been trying to train extremely hard. And Midoriya actually has given her a thumbs up, saying that he was hoping she would say that, as he actually does fall backwards and go to lay out in the giant pile. Everyone watching Midoriya do that as he begins to move downwards. Finds to be quite weird. All that sand and Midoriya disappearing through the floor. Now, with that being said, this does seem to be a bit more odd. And eventually, Kirishima does actually appear on the floor down, or around the third or fourth floor. While Bakugou, he's actually just trying to inspect the building and look around, trying to find out if these damn nerds are going to try and do a sneak attack. And Bakugou actually is correct. Now, whenever Midoriya actually shook the building, what he did was actually turn parts of the building into sand. Areas that he'd be able to squeeze through, basically creating crawl spaces. And he is currently moving throughout the building. Think of it like that one guy in Overhaul's crew. However, Midoriya, he can not see anything. He's only relying on his somewhat developed seismic sensibility, where he's beginning to get a rough draft or idea of where somebody can be with his hearing, especially due to his connection with the earth and his quirk. Now, with that, Midoriya is able to pinpoint Bakugou's location, since Bakugou will not stop yelling. Now, Midoriya actually just finds this to be quite interesting. As Bakugou, he actually does go to take another step, stopping for a second as he does actually go to spin around, and blast off a very large explosion. Now, with that being said, Bakugou, he doesn't see anyone behind him, thinking for a second that his nerves just got the better of him. And everyone in the command deck is confused. Why did Bakugou just fire off an explosion? Now, that was very interesting. However, Bakugou did not fire in the right direction. As he actually had stopped to turn around, Midoriya grabbed him by his ankles, and actually had begun to throw him down to the ground, sinking him halfway down to the floor as he does actually appear directly in front of Bakugou, rising up through a pillar in the ground. Now, Bakugou does find this to be very confusing, simply just shouting, "What the hell?" Now, Midoriya actually does say, "Surprise," and Bakugou actually does go to bring up his hand to blast an explosion. As soon as Bakugou did actually go to blast the explosion, and it actually did fly from his hand, Midoriya actually did create a very large gust of wind, and basically sucked the air out of Bakugou's explosion. Before, with his right hand, he actually did grab Bakugou with an entire pillar of sand, and ripped Bakugou's gauntlet off of his arm. Now, he then actually did proceed to hold Bakugou's hand down to the ground, and asked Bakugou if he really does think that he can beat them. What the hell do you think? Besides, your cheap tricks won't work on me. I still have... Bakugou going to throw his hand outwards, as his entire torso is covered in sand, before it does actually harden. Bakugou stopping his arm before he can even continue, beginning to shout and scream at Midoriya to let him go so they can fight. Midoriya tells Bakugou no. In fact, he's playing the role of a villain, and he's not going to let the pro hero take any chances. Now, Midoriya does actually continue talking, and the way he looks, the way he's dressed, and especially with the way that you cannot see his eyes or the exact way he's trying to convey himself, he does seem like a very particular villain. All Might actually questioning if Midoriya is really somewhat acting. Now, while they are doing that, we actually do have somewhat on the higher floors, with Denki, her actually staying there, and beginning to charge up one for all. Now, with this, she actually does crank herself up. Her absolute maximum has increased. Around the time of the sports festival, she can use around 2 to 3 the sports festival. Around the time of the entrance exam, she could use around 2 to 3%. And after she basically did have to help Midoriya save somebody, she did want to increase her maximum output. So she started training more. And she did get physically better and stronger. Now, she is currently pushing herself a little too far, as she's increased her maximum output to around 12 to 15%. Now, with that, we actually have Kirishima, who does pop into the room and see her. Him actually being very surprised, looking around and wondering where the bomb is, before he actually does go to turn his head. And that girl who was just staying there with electricity is gone. Before he actually does hear something, turning his head, and then looking around again. He can hear it. It sounds like squeaking. What is that? Him finally at least looking up, and paying attention to what he does see, as the lights in the building do begin to burst. And that Denki, she actually does begin to build up her own speed, and use her metallic disc plate. Now, she actually does go in, and go to attack Kirishima. And since Kirishima does actually see this metallic disc, he does somewhat bring his hands up and harden his arms, as Denki smashes directly into him with this. And Kirishima actually does begin to try and fight against her. Him grabbing the disc with his hands and just beginning to push back against it. As Denki, she actually just jump backwards and go sliding down onto her feet, as she actually does go to run back in. Everyone's surprised at the intense speed this girl actually does hold, along with All Might watching his student, or his successor, fight. Now, these two do begin. Kirishima actually does find it quite interesting. This girl's somewhat cute, strong, and actually very, very powerful. And she does actually possess 2 quirks. Now, with that being said, these two actually do begin somewhat of a physical battle. Kirishima, he's able to stay hardened, and fight against Denki. Now, Denki, she does have somewhat of combat experience. However, not a whole lot. She's able to hold the edge in speed and almost in power. However, Kirishima, his quirk is literally made it into a fistfight. And she has somewhat of a good theory about his quirk. If she is to hit him hard enough, or simply just not get a good amount of damage in one single blow, she might actually help him build durability. And this theory is actually somewhat in infancy. However, it would be correct. The best way for Kirishima to train his quirk is to quite literally take a punch. Now, these two actually do begin their own little battle. And it actually is somewhat long. Now, with that battle going on, there are also explosions going on downstairs. As we will cut back to Deku. Deku, who's currently at least flying throughout the building, and basically trying to keep his distance from Bakugou. And he actually is throwing out different parts of the earth, as Bakugou is trying to blast his way towards him. Now, Midoriya is actually flying backwards, and he is not actually touching the ground. Everyone surprised exactly how Midoriya can control his ability. And then what he's doing. He's somehow using both quirks. Using the quirks in his legs to fly, meanwhile using his hands and his other ability to actually fight with Earth. And All Might does actually find this to be somewhat impressive. Now, with that being said, Bakugou, he simply just blasts through anything Deku puts up. Puts up pillars to attack him, he blasts through them. Deku puts up a wall, Bakugou blasts through it. And then there actually is an idea Midoriya does have. As he actually does put one of his arms behind his back. As he throws his arm out to the right, to the left, up, and then down. Now, Midoriya created 4 thick walls in front of Bakugou. And Bakugou actually tried and blast through this one. Now, Bakugou, as soon as he did actually blast at the wall, found that it did not break. And Midoriya, he actually quickly began to start repairing it from the other side. Him actually using his seismic sense. And actually throwing down his left leg. As Bakugou, he actually did see something begin to form. A pillar coming straight out of the wall and smashing him dead center in the chest. As the pillar just kept going. And Bakugou was eventually smashed into the wall down the hallway. Now, Bakugou just quickly began to punch away and blast away at this thing. As Midoriya is still powering up an attack. And he's actually somewhat ready. Now, he actually does wonder about this ability, and hope that it could actually work. In theory, it should not be very powerful. However, if he does actually compact it down this much, then, well, it's gonna be very dangerous. Now, eventually the wall actually does fall, and Bakugou actually just blasts through it, and Deku actually does begin to move backwards more. Before, he actually does dig his feet down into the ground, and earth begins to cover his body. And sand actually does begin to form into armor around Midoriya. As Midoriya actually does cock back his right arm and throw it out forwards. Everyone watching as a very large tornado does actually begin to fly out of Midoriya's hand. And Bakugou is not only swept away in it, but not only does it rip through the walls and windows, it actually does somewhat begin to blow away the entire floor. And Midoriya, he actually is quite surprised. Now, think of this like what's the best way to say? It would be like a 30 to 35% smash if All Might were to have done it. Not if Ken and Deku were to have done it, because that would be very powerful. However, with All Might, I believe that could be a 19 or possibly even half of that actual percentage. But it was actually still quite insane. Midoriya manipulating pure wind pressure and certain things. As Bakugou is sent flying out of the building. And Midoriya, he's actually sent flying backwards, recoiling from his own attack. And severely damaging his right arm. Now, along with it, his armor did actually get blown away, and the building began to shake more. Midoriya is smashing into a wall as he actually does fall down and lay against it. Meanwhile, we actually do have on Bakugou's comm system. Bakugou is currently passed out, and a couple floors of the building are actually exposed, All Might being able to make visible eye contact on Bakugou. And Bakugou, he actually has someone begin to respond. In a very groggy and, well, inaudible tone, he's trying to say something. And Bakugou's true words are actually somewhat lost on everyone. Bakugou trying to call Midoriya's bullshit on that attack. Now, back over with Kaminari and Kirishima. These two are still fighting. And we actually do have what's going on. Kaminari has increased or trying to push herself to an extreme extent. Her going up to around 20% of One for All, and trying to actually use her own quirk. Her jumping around the room and actually being to crack pillars every time she jumps off of them, and blast away with her own abilities. Now, with that, Kaminari actually does pick up on all this. Kirishima does actually somewhat find this to be very intriguing. Not only is he being hit with electricity and it hurts like hell, but she's also trying to go for quick-paced attacks. And it's very weird to say the least. Now, eventually this fight does have to come to a conclusion. And it comes to a conclusion whenever Kirishima overestimates his own attacks. And he does actually go on the offensive against Denki. Her actually being able to get Kirishima to punch into a very large pillar. And when he actually does go to pull his hand outwards, her actually blasting away at the metal within the wall, and beginning to manipulate electricity. Now, she manipulates the current she is pulling through this metal, as she's actually able to begin to get it to wrap around Kirishima's arm. And he cannot get free. Her actually beginning to use the same method against the floor. And the floor actually is beginning to break apart and rip open. Rebar actually beginning to wrap around Kirishima as he is captured. Now, he states that that's not fair, and exactly what is her quirk? Metal, electricity, what's going on? Now, she actually does tell Kirishima that her quirk is actually a secret, as she does actually make somewhat of a funny face to him. And his heart does actually somewhat skip a beat. Now, with that being said, the villains are actually somewhat given credits. However, Midoriya is actually somewhat reprimanded for what he did do, being told by Recovery Girl that he really should be more careful with what he did, and that the current way he used his own quirk was very reckless and dangerous. Midoriya understanding Recovery Girl, but saying that he didn't expect that attack to be very powerful. Now, along with that, we actually do have Denki, who she herself did actually need to take some vitamin gummies to help her body physically recover from the muscle strain. Now, with that being said, Bakugou also is in Recovery Girl's office, recovering and getting rested. Along with Kirishima, he was someone who didn't actually take very much damage. However, Recovery Girl did want to check him out and make sure that he was okay. Now then, with that being said, I do hope you guys all enjoyed, and have an amazing night. I will catch you guys in the next part.